Hello and welcome into this edition of the Golf Channel podcast with Rex and Lav. Folks, it's a major championship preview. We're taking all the favorites, all the contenders, all the pretenders of this week's PGA Championship at Oak Hill, hometown event for yours truly. So we're talking Oak Hill, we're talking PGA of America criteria, we're talking how the LIV golfers will fare. This is sure to be a meaty one, although Rex has a hard out. Rex, we've got a couple hours to kill until our live from hits. It was expected to be 45-degree temperatures. What's top of mind at the moment for you?
A garbage plate. You forgot about garbage plate.
Garbage plate. Got to talk about those. If you folks have never heard of a garbage plate,
and if you missed this afternoon's live from where I asked you on air about a garbage plate, and instead you talked about pooping.
Yep. I believe that's either the second or third poop reference I've made on live TV. That no one has caught yet.
Gross.
If you're not familiar with a garbage plate, it's kind of like it sounds. Like it's hamburger, it's hot dog, it's Italian sausage, it's mac and cheese, it's beans, all just piled onto one plate. Why would you do it? I don't know. I have no idea why the popularity. I wouldn't go out of my way to recommend one for someone. Like they're not delicious. Like it's
but
not,
you were born and raised here. Give me someone who can tell me the origin story of this.
The origin story is it's a Rochester garbage plate. I was not born and raised in Rochester. I was raised in Canandaigua, New York, which is part of the Finger Lakes, about 30 minutes south of here. This is we're in Pittsford, New York, although some are using the date line of Rochester. Pittsford is a very leafy community, and I was born decidedly middle class. We were not familiar with garbage plates in Canandaigua. It was only until I got older, and when I was flying out of Rochester Airport, when I would dabble in the garbage plates. I gave you this advice on the air, and you're flying out on Sunday morning, so you're not even going to be here for the final round of what's sure to be a thrilling PGA Championship. I would not recommend eating a garbage plate before then boarding the plane. I don't care if you're getting upgraded as you typically do on your hashtag Delta flights. I would not eat one, despite Nick Tahoe's being very, very close to the airport. Do not eat one before you get on that plane. Can't stress that enough. There could be some internal combustion.
There it is. So I love that we lean into the funny. Like I like the idea that you and I try to make jokes. Very few of them land, but at least we give it a chance. We try to mix some humor in with our analysis. But why do you always have to go straight to that? But why is it that we always have to go to the lowest common denominator? And you do it on live TV. As you said, this is the third or fourth time that on live TV you have gotten around to the idea that this is a problem for me pooping.
Why has no one said anything? Are they not listening? Are they not watching? Do they just look at the rundown and it says 5 minutes? They don't care how we get there. What we're talking about as long as we hit the checkpoints.
No,
Sad.
They don't. They don't care. I think it says a lot about you though, but that's where you always end up, and I always end up with the exact same response. Yuck. Like can't we keep it a little bit more highbrow than that? Why do you have to go blue every single time?
I think it's because I have two kids under the age of 4, so my life is still very much dominated by poop. I mean, I would relish the opportunity to not discuss it every night with my wife, but the conversation always devolves into, so who pooped? who got poop on you? It's very much unknown at this point. I'm very much enjoying the home game. It's been a great return for me. I'm staying with my dad, who lives about 10 minutes away. You did not join us for Dinosaur Barbecue. He did treat us. He did treat 5 of us scribes to a delicious brisket and rib dinner. This is a busy day at Oak Hill. This is the day they typically have the most players come in through the press conference area. The headliner, to me, and kind of the predominant storyline at this PGA Championship is, which Rory McIlroy are we going to see? Was it the one who was downright buoyant leading into the Masters, only for him to be deflated and miss the cut there? Or is it going to be kind of the player we saw at the Wells Fargo Championship, who was a little bit muted, I would say, didn't have quite the same zest or enthusiasm for life. What were your impressions of Roy today as he met with the press first off?
And we talked about this on live from.
You just broke your mic, didn't you?
I did. I thought I fixed it though in time. Apparently, I did not. The problem is I bent the cable, and so if anybody from NBC Sports is
Just
listening to this, and you can help me out with it. Yeah, please help me out here. And it's very, very heavy, so I'm just going to go ahead and give up and go with the air. This was my line when we brought this up. We talk all the time about players and coaches who win press conferences. That we always have the idea that, okay, this guy had an absolute great press conference. I think Rory lost that press conference, and it's weird because, as you pointed out, a month ago at the Masters, more or less a month ago at the Masters. I mean, here's a guy that was just on top of the world. I mean, he had lined up. It seemed like everything was finally going to go his way. He was finally going to have an opportunity to get the green jacket. And now, a month later, I've never heard him sound so defeated. I've never heard him be so short of questions, specifically questions, anything that had to do with LIV Golf. He just deflected, shut it down. I thought one of the more interesting answers that he gave is that he wants to sidestep the narrative. And he answered with a very simple and very direct yes. That's what he plans on doing. He has gone from the outspoken spokesman for the PGA Tour. He has gone to Jay Monahan's best wingman, because in this particular case, like, that is who Jay needed in his corner in this particular fight too. I don't want anything to do with this anymore. And I guess my takeaway was, we kind of knew there would be a toll. We kind of knew that there would be a price to pay for him sort of investing as much as of himself into this fight and sort of mixing that activism with his day job, which is a professional golfer, and that demands a lot of time, a lot of energy. I think all of us sort of knew deep down inside there would be a toll, but when you finish second at Bay Hill after, I think it was like an 8-hour policy board meeting on Tuesday, when you were able to deliver last year at East Lake with essentially the weight of the entire PGA Tour on your shoulders, when you're able to win the Canadian Open, and the only thing that's going through your mind as you're finishing up that victory is
tweaking Greg Norman.
This is my 21st PGA Tour title. That's one more than Greg Norman. That's your first comment. Like, the idea that he has been consumed by this and that he's done a 180 in the last month, that for whatever reason, he's decided that I want out. I don't want the smoke anymore. I found that fascinating.
Don't you think that's just a convenient excuse? I mean, if Rory McIlroy was going to have a breakdown, it was going to be last summer, right? When he's playing great golf, he's literally remaking the PGA Tour on the fly. I'm not privy to what's going on behind closed doors with Rory McIlroy. I certainly have some theories. I think it's all related to the Masters. And he met with us on Tuesday at Augusta National, and I thought he was expansive, he was reflective, he was hopeful. On Wednesday, he said he hit it great. And he's been quoted recently and saying, like, I was never more sure of anything in my life that I was going to play well at the Masters. And the fact that he didn't seems to have, like, rocked him to his core. Like, he doesn't know what's up. He doesn't know what's down. He doesn't know what's around the bend. I think that has totally rattled him. It's his confidence. It's his psyche. It was one of those moments where, you know, it's easy to, I think, if you're playing great, to kind of shrug off. Like, I'm looking at Max Homa right now, and he once again did not play well at the Masters, so doesn't have a top 10 in a major championship. But he said he kind of shrugged it off because he knows he's playing great golf. He knows he's one of the top 10 players in the world for the first time. And, like, hey, it's just golf, and it happens. I think that was such a deflating moment for Rory that he can't just shake it off, right? Obviously, the Masters means so much, but everything was trending in the right direction. All the momentum was building that moment, and for him to face plant there, I think is like shaking his entire foundation. I think that's the player that we see 5 weeks later.
I can see there's something there. Yeah, I don't think you're reaching on that one, because you're right. I mean, he came into that one and it seems like all the stars were finally lined up, that the green jacket was finally going to be his. He was finally going to complete the career Grand Slam. However, I will say that it's not his game that he deflected on today. As a matter of fact, he kind of the most in-depth answers he gave was what he's trying to fix with his swing and how he's coming along with Michael Bannon. And apparently Tiger Woods got involved, saw something on the coverage at the Wells Fargo and texted him. So that part, he's fine still talking about. I still felt like there was a part of the old Rory McIlroy that we've come to know and love. It was the part about LIV Golf. It was the part about being this lightning rod. Where at the BMW PGA last year, he was asked, sorry to ask you another LIV question, and he just called for all of it. Nope, give it to me. I want it all. And he just doesn't want that anymore. So yes,
But we're not even asking about that anymore.
No, we did. I mean, he was asked specifically LIV Golf questions today, and he completely specifically shut them down. I think he was at, like our colleague asked him specifically, where do you see golf in 3 years? And he goes, I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. That is very un-Rory like. He does not shut people down like that. He was asked specifically about the narrative. Like, are you trying to sidestep the narrative? Yep. And that was it. That was his answer. That's very un-Rory like. So you're right. I mean, I think whatever happened at Augusta National, whatever happened the next week with deciding to skip Hilton Head and to pay that $3 million penalty, I think that all sort of compounded to the idea that, look, man, I'm done with all the outside noise. I just need to focus on the day job, which is playing good golf.
How much do you think, Rex, it's not public criticism, but it was almost a rejection from PGA Tour Commissioner Jay Monahan with this $3 million penalty, right? So Roy left open the possibility that, hey, I told him my reasons. He obviously understands how instrumental I have been to the PGA Tour over the past year, the burden, the toll that I have put on myself to put the PGA Tour in a better position for the future. So he has those reasons, and if he thinks that's justified, then yeah, I'll probably get my money that way. And Jay Monahan came out, and although he, in your opinion, showed the proper amount of empathy, said, no, the rules are the rules. That's what's the regulations, and it's not going to happen. Do you think that there's lingering resentment, anger, embarrassment for how that all went down? Do you think that factors into this scenario as well?
You clean that up much better than last week. Yeah, I feel like I kind of slapped you on the nose with the newspaper.
That's still my opinion that it was not handled as well as it could have been.
Apparently me pushing back stung, so you decided to workshop it and come up with a better way of saying it. No, I thought he showed, the commissioner showed a proper amount of understanding. I mean, when he talked about the idea that if Rory just needed a mental break, I mean, we're in a time in sports, we're in a time where you're not going to question anyone. If someone wants to take a week off, even if that week's going to cost you $3 million,
but don't penalize them. If you're using mental health as a rationale,
I think he had a choice. I think that was the point.
How is it any different than a back injury?
Well, no, it's much different because he's already chosen to skip one of the designated events, which you're allowed to do. He did not play in Maui at the Century Tournament of Champions. And this was just a corner that the commissioner was boxed into that he couldn't get out of. There was just no way for him to overlook this and to wave it off.
It's a nightmare to explain it to the rest of the membership.
Yeah, the rest of the membership have already, look, there's an element of the membership, and not a small element of the membership, that have already started to push back on Rory as sort of this front runner, that he's redesigned the tour, that he and Tiger have come up with this concept of what they want the tour to look like. And pretty much the tour and Jay Monahan are just following and caving in. And so what they can't have, what the commissioner cannot have, is suddenly making it look like, okay, there are Rory rules. That can't, that one's tough. Rory rules. He cannot make it look like, reward. He can't make it look like that he's caving in on this one. So he did what was best for the tour. He did what the regulations called for. I understand where you're coming from.
At the risk of alienating
your star and your spokesperson and your ally.
His most prized asset, yeah.
But I don't think that's what did it. Like, I wrote the column today on golfchannel.com. I don't think it's how he handled that $3 million in missing Hilton Head. I don't think that's what sort of brought him to the breaking point. I really don't. I mean, my guess is Rory was disappointed in how it played out, but I think this is a combination of the things that we've talked about. The idea that he was wildly disappointed with missing the cut at the Masters. The idea that all of this has finally caught up with him, that he's tired of being in the middle of the hurricane. He doesn't want to do this anymore. The idea that he's a decade now removed from winning a major championship. I think that all just sort of collapsed on him at one time.
So what does it mean, Rex, for this week? If you'd asked me on January 1, which major championship do you think Rory McIlroy is most likely to win, I would have said the PGA Championship at Oak Hill. And the folks here, God bless them, I used to be among them, but they are running with this storyline that this is Rory McIlroy's hometown tournament. Obviously, his wife Erica is from the area. With
you're not buying
20 minutes away from here. He's played like 27 holes in his life at Oak Hill despite having an honorary membership. He said the past 2 days he's played more golf here than he has in the previous intervening years. And so is he going to have slightly more support? Okay, maybe. Is there more pressure for him to win at Oak Hill than Augusta National or any other venues? No, I do not see. So I'm not saying that Rory was most likely to win because of that scenario. That I'm totally dismissing that cutesy storyline. I'm saying I would have circled him on January 1 because of this golf course. It is 7,500 yards. It's a par 70. You have to drive the ball on a rope. All scoring opportunities are going to come from the fairway. Legit. The greens are not. They've been restored. The Friday did a great job of kind of illustrating the difference between now and 2013. Like they're different, but they're not severe in like a wing foot sense. And so, you don't have to get lucky, so to speak. And so if a winning score is going to be in that 8 to 10 under par range with what this golf course is going to demand, like I thought Rory McIlroy was going to win this tournament. I do not feel on the eve of this championship nearly as confident in that prediction. What do you feel about his chances?
I mean, you're talking about on January 1st. I would say on May 1st, I was probably thinking that Rory was still the guy, and that's after missing the cut at the Masters. I just felt like, for your point, like this is the one that seems to bring out the best in him. And look, he clearly hasn't gotten it done in a long time, but the skill set is still there. I mean, all the things that made him really, really good when he won at Valhalla and really, really good when he won at Kiowa, he does them as well, if not better, now in the current version. However, you're a long time removed from being like a beat writer at a daily newspaper. Yes, they're fishing for this one, but what else are you going to fish for? It's not like, what are they going to write a story about you as the only local that's here?
No, I'm not asking for a human interest piece in regards to me. The number of questions I have, the
local questions
folded up here. I mean, it had to have been 8, if not more questions directly related to Roy's affiliation to the area. Like, I give him credit. He didn't snap. He didn't say like, dude, I barely know this golf course. Like, give me a break.
He was better with those answers than he was with the answers about LIV Golf by far.
Yeah. I mean, he certainly played nice with the local media. I get it. What do you think? Is he going to miss the cut? Is he going to win? Is he going to top 10, top 25?
That's a good one.
Where are we going?
I use this kind of as my kicker quote in my column. So this is his line when he was kind of talking about the tweaks that he's doing with his swing right now. And he said, quote, "There's nothing drastic that I need to change. I've been working a little bit on my swing the last couple of weeks, trying to get that back in order. If I can execute the way I know that I can, then I should be okay." When a guy says I should be okay, that doesn't exactly ring hollow with he's going to win a major championship. No one that's ever said on Tuesday, I'm okay, has gone on to win on Sunday. I just don't believe that happens.
Okay. So what does it mean? Are you calling him miscut?
No, I think he will miss the cut. I feel like I kind of look at what he did.
You think he's going to miss the cut?
No. I'm sorry. I think he's going to make the cut. Sorry. I think what we saw at Wells Fargo was probably what I expect. He'll make the cut, but it'll never be anything close to being in contention. Like I could see him doing a top 20, maybe even a backdoor top 10. But from what I saw statistically of his game at Quail Hollow, and certainly what we saw at the Masters, it's just not there right now for whatever reason, whether if it's a mental block or if it's a physical change or if it's something about his swing. So, I mean, unless whatever Tiger saw and sort of dropped in his lap is going to be the magical fix. And when someone says, I'll be okay, that doesn't suggest the magical fix is on the way.
The answer is 6. 6 questions were asked of Rory McIlroy in regards to his connection to this area. I actually thought it was more
the whole time,
but 6 is a lot. I'm with you. My expectations, honestly, are quite low. Or a player who at least has a two-way miss somewhere in the arsenal. This is not a golf course.
So you're going miscut
that you want to do that? No, I think he's somewhere in the T20 to T50 range. Just kind of like a middling.
Just made the same guess. Yes.
Yeah. Just like a middling finish. I don't think he's lost enough to miss the cut, but I don't think he's sharp enough to contend. I think that's the best way I can put it. One player, I think, on the opposite end of the spectrum, and who literally bounded into the the press conference area within 5 minutes of Rory McIlroy is Jon Rahm. And I thought you made the very astute point on live from earlier today that Jon, in contrast to Rory, has really stayed above the fray with the LIV Wars. He's not emotionally invested himself in the outcome. He hasn't picked sides. He's tried to maintain some of the friendships with the players that he had previously. How do you think that has manifested itself in a player who's kind of running roughshod over the rest of the competition right now?
I would argue that it's provided him a
Lost
clarity that I
Lost
know.
it again.
I know. It's because I had to change hands because I was getting a cramp. I would argue, and now it fell out. Look, so whoever at NBC Sports can help me with that. So let's just show it to everyone.
No,
that's fantastic. I would argue that it's provided him a clarity of thought that Rory clearly does not have. And you're right. He's remained above it all. He's still friends with Phil Mickelson. Has always been since he turned pro. Obviously, his affinity, his relationship, his friendship with Sergio Garcia is well documented. And that's allowed him to sort of maintain the middle road. I mean, look, I think he's always maintained his allegiance to the PGA Tour. That's never been in question. But he has not been the one that's gone to the mic and questioned them about doing whatever it is they're doing. He's never questioned why are you doing this for money? Why are you turning your back on the PGA Tour? For him, it's always just been a personal decision that they made, and he's moved on. And for him, I mean, can you imagine the just sort of the thought pattern difference between Jon Rahm and Rory McIlroy on this particular topic, where Jon has clearly not spent any time thinking about it. He's not wasted a second of energy on it, and Rory has dedicated at least the last 18 months, if not more.
I think it's very interesting because remember earlier in his career, like Jon Rahm was criticized for being overly emotional, a hothead. He didn't kind of have the on-course comportment that you'd expect of a major championship. And I think he still maintained a lot of that fire and that passion on the golf course, but that has never trickled into Jon Rahm's personal life. He's always maintained an even keel. He's always maintained a perspective. He says he tries not to be judgmental towards anyone or their decisions. And I think that puts him in stark contrast with Rory McIlroy, who tends to be kind of emotionally based in some of his decision making. And thus, I think when you look at his performance over what is a Hall of Fame career, arguably one of the best European players ever, like there's a lot of waves, right? There's a lot of peaks and valleys that he's experienced throughout the last decade. Certainly, Jon Rahm, he doesn't have blips. He doesn't have, dips in performance. Like he was asked earlier today, like, what are some of the low points that you've had in your career? And he's like,
had a hard time finding him. Had a hard time thinking of him. Yeah.
I didn't play particularly well in like 2018 or 2019. He still won on the European Tour. He said I didn't play particularly well last year, at least according to my expectations. Like he still won 3 times worldwide. Like, so I think that mentality that Jon Rahm has carried with him throughout his career actually helps him. It helps him have an equilibrium. It helps him stay above the fray, as you said earlier today. And he just doesn't waste his time or energy on something that's not going to help his golf. I think is the simplest way to boil it down.
Well, and again, this is kind of speculation because
you fixed it. Well done.
And we talked. Yeah, I tried. And we talked about this after the fact. Like we don't know what's going on in Rory's personal life. We're basing everything that we're talking about now just on professional, like what happened at the Masters, what's going on with LIV Golf. I think there's probably something to be said for the idea that Rory has probably come to the conclusion that a lot of other people have come to, and certainly Jon Rahm has, that whatever is going to happen between LIV Golf and the PGA Tour at this point is inevitable. That whatever it is, whatever rhetoric you want to throw out there, it's not going to change the narrative. You're still going to have these two separate sides. Both sides are still going to be entrenched. We're still going to have lawsuits. So what this boils down to, are you going to waste your time and your energy and your focus and your probably most productive years as a professional golfer worrying about this? And it seems like Jon, whether if he did it consciously or not, or organically, just came to this sooner than Rory did. Because you can see now in Rory that
Rahm is staking his legacy to his results, and Rory, I think, wanted to stake his legacy into kind of being the leader of this tumultuous time in golf. You think that's fair?
Yes, I think it's fair, and I'm done with that. I can see it when it happens too. That's the aggravating part. As soon as it comes up, it mutes me whenever that thing falls out. And now I've got a cramp in my arm, which makes it even worse. So the audio is going to be bad. I apologize in advance. Please don't at me.
And you're gonna have to go. You're gonna have to go see the PT.
Yeah, then I'm going to have to go see the PT. I think that's probably a good assessment because, and again, I don't even know that Jon Rahm or Rory came to that idea consciously or subconsciously, because in Rory's mind, and he addressed it today, the idea that if his career was over today, he can still look back and feel like he was successful. And I'm sure Jon Rahm probably has this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
Yes, and I don't think that at any point Rory came to the conclusion that, okay, I'm going to focus on this, live off the PGA Tour, get involved in this fight, and to the detriment of my playing career, because I feel like this is a better thing to do. In his mind, he probably thought he could do both. And I think we have since learned that he probably can't, at least not for a long, prolonged period of time.
Jon Rahm, I thoroughly expect to perform well this week at Oak Hill. I would put Scotty Scheffler in that same category. He has not finished worse than 12th. This feels like a misprint. Has not finished worse than 12th since last October. He's actually my pick to win this golf tournament for the completeness of his game. I think it sets up particularly well for his skill sets, specifically his scrambling. So if we're talking about this golf course in particular, Rex, I don't know how much you've been able to be out on the golf course. You did cover the previous two major championships at Oak Hill. What feels different about this one, and what can viewers expect when this shows up on Thursday morning?
It's starting to feel, I was just actually out on the golf course kind of walking with some players. It's starting to actually feel like it feels like a US Open, which is kind of shocking. I think coming in, there was the concern, and we'll probably talk about this later, but whenever this event moved to May, so in 2019, when they moved from August to May, that these Northeast venues weren't going to hold up very well. Because, I mean, you know this being a native from up here, if you have a bad winter here, the golf courses aren't really ready to go by May. You need to have a good May, good June, maybe even in July, before you get them to where you want them. I've been told, Seth Wall told me that they had 44 inches of snow in this area over the wintertime, which to me sounds like a lot of snow. I mean, that sounds like a terrible winter. Apparently, that's not too bad. And so what we end up with is a golf course that's in much better shape than I think a lot of people gave credit for. And the rough is so juicy. The fairways are fiery. I'll go back to what Ricky Fowler told me at Wells Fargo. I was talking to him on Sunday trying to get an idea, get some stuff for this week. And I go, what kind of player do you think is going to win at Oak Hill? And he kind of thought back and he goes, Jason Duffner won last time we were there. And I said, yes. And he goes, that's it. And he goes, the dude's like a robot. I mean, the USGA should use him to test irons and golf balls, because back in that time period, back when he was at his prime,
Sharpshooter.
He was just a robot. No one was going to confuse him with Jason Day or Jordan Spieth on the green, in or around the greens. And no one was going to confuse him with Rory McIlroy off the tee. Well, you put an iron on his hands in the middle of the fairway, and it was like he was dialed in. And I think it's going to be very, very similar this week. I will say that out walking the first couple of holes, I was talking with some equipment reps. I think you need, I don't know if length is going to be necessarily important, but you certainly need to have some level of accuracy, because if you're in the rough, I don't think you're going to be able to get more than an 8-iron on the ball. It's going to be tough. Yeah,
there's been a lot of comparisons to Winged Foot that I have seen, and obviously we know who won that U.S. Open in 2020. That was Bryson DeChambeau, who bombed and bashed his way to a 6-shot victory that week. I don't quite see that. The rough is not that long. You can advance it. Like, it's not going to be hack out central, but it's so thick and it's so dense that it's hard to have control over, which I think is great. Like, it puts a premium on accuracy, certainly, but it's also a long golf course. I mean, it's 7,500 yards. It's only 2 par 5s playing as a par 70. Both of them are over 600 yards. You have 4 par 4s over 500 yards. Like, if you don't hit the fairway, those holes are not birdie holes necessarily for par 5s, and you're probably looking at bogeys if you miss the fairway on those very beefy par 4s. Like, I don't think the scoring is going to be very good at all. And so, these fairways are firming up. It's going to be really cold in the morning. Like, we're looking at possible frost delay on Thursday. Like, I think it's going to be a brute. I think it's everything you'd want in a major championship test. I think it's actually closer to like a Southern Hills than it would be like a Winged Foot U.S. Open. You know what I mean?
Well, and it was an interesting conversation because, look, the idea that the PGA is not going to be able to come back to these northeastern venues, certainly Midwest. So you start talking about Whistling Straits, Medina, that seems to be out of the equation right now. But again, talking with Seth Wald this afternoon, I think they've actually been pleasantly surprised of what they've ended up with this
This
week.
could have been a horror show. This could have been a horror show this week.
It could have been. And look, Kerry Haig, who is very much from England, not from Scotland, very much from England. Kerry Haig and I had a really good laugh about that. Friends, my colleague doesn't seem to be able to understand accents very well because I've gone and we've done this numerous times. And Lav seems to think 100% that Kerry Haig is from Scotland. Anyone that's ever heard Kerry Haig speak, please add him.
I want him to do mentions. I want him to do ancestry.com. I'm convinced.
He's very much. He's from Leeds. Scotland. He sounds a lot. Actually, the accent sounds a lot like Luke Donald in my mind. We had a good laugh at your expense this afternoon. I've never seen Kerry Haig. He's very much from England. This isn't even up for debate. This is very clear. He is where he's from. But I've never seen him smile so much than talking to him this morning after his press conference because he has everything he wants. I mean, the only thing Kerry Haig and anyone who sets up golf courses for a living wants is the weather and the ability to do whatever he's going to top off the rough, and the fairways are firm and fast. That's all he could possibly ask for. Now, the rain on Saturday probably isn't going to be optimal, and certainly the cold.
It's just going to be a sprinkle.
On Thursday morning is not going to be optimal. But other than that, they've been able to do exactly what they want in this golf course. And that, I think you're right. I think a brute is probably the best way of saying it. You said 10, 12 under par. That might be a little aggressive.
I said 8. I think we're looking 8 to 10.
Yeah, that sounds better. And it seems like we're splitting hairs a little bit. But I don't see double digits. I'd be pretty impressed.
Oh, yeah. That would certainly be an incredible display of golf if someone got to double digits under par. Jason Duffner, who won in 2013, was 10 under par. That's the lowest score to par it's ever been at Oak Hill. You mentioned Kerry Haig, Seth Wald, the CEO of the PGA. They also had a press conference today. What was your takeaway? The first one for me was the rollback. PGA of America was the last organization to weigh in on the proposed local rule, which would go into effect 2026, limiting distance at the elite level while not touching it at the recreational level. Honestly, I think the PGA of America's hands are already tied on this one. USJ and RNA obviously are going to adopt it. Fred Ridley, chairman of the Masters tournament, said that he was, quote, supportive of it. PGA really doesn't have much of a choice but to fall in line. He did say, Seth Wald, the CEO of the PGA, said that he liked the fact that the recreational game would not be touched by this rule. He said, we're finally getting people involved in the game like we've been trying to do over the past couple of decades. So he's glad that it's not going to limit distance for them. I think he struggles with, I think what a lot of people struggle with is the idea of bifurcation, right? 2 sets of rules for professionals and amateurs. Some charm in being able to play technically the same equipment as Rory McIlroy, play the same tee and see how you stack up. That will be lost potentially with this rule. So that was kind of my takeaway. What was yours from what the PGA officials said today?
Well, and the new golf ball rule is interesting because the 3 organizations you named that all seem to be on board at this point. That's obviously the RNA, the USGA, and you're right, Augusta National seems to be angling in that direction. They don't have 27,000 members that have a stake in this, that have some sort of money in this game. And we're talking about the club pros. And it is going to hit home for a lot of Seth Wald's members. And that's why I think he's the one that threw out there. It wasn't even a question to him. The idea of bifurcation probably doesn't land well with the PGA Championship. With the PGA of America. Whatever it is the professional game does, I think they would be fine with. Like, they'll play by whatever the rules are for this particular tournament, for this championship. Their problem is, as you pointed out, it's at the amateur level. And he pointed to the momentum that golf got from the pandemic, all the bad things that came from the pandemic. Golf got a huge boost, and they've been able to maintain that. And anything that could potentially threaten that, he's going to push back on. You're right. His hands are tied, but he's in a very unique situation. Like, not only does he have to play ball with everyone else in the ecosystem, but he's got 27,000 members that he has to make happy, and this is going to hit home for them.
You didn't touch on the storyline that I thought you were going to, which is the fact that the PGA of America
world ranking
reiterated the fact that they want the best field at the PGA Championship, regardless of a player's affiliated tour. That means that even if the LIV golfers continue to fall out of the top 100 in the world ranking, that they would have still these special invitations. It's certainly a gray area, isn't it, Rex? Because we're going to get to a point where right now there's 5 LIV players inside the top 50. The OWGR decision isn't expected for a couple of months. We don't even know which way they're potentially going to side with that application. And so I think it's reasonable to say by the time next year's PGA Championship rolls around, maybe you have 1 or 2 LIV players. And so the PGA of America, when Kerry Haigh sits down and pores over the research and meets with the committee to finalize who they're going to recommend for these special invitations to the PGA Championship, they're going to have to make some hard decisions and weigh players who are not competing in like tournaments. That potentially opens the PGA of America up to criticism when you don't have guidelines that are specific enough. It's always been kind of a murky area. Who's going to qualify? Who's not going to qualify? Who's going to be exempt? Who's not going to be exempt? I just wish they would go and say, we will make sure that the best players from this tour, the ones who are playing the best, are going to be there, and just have some sort of category for it. If you can do it for the Australasian tour, if you could do it for the Japan tour, if you can do it for the Sunshine Tour, if you could do it for the International Tour of Federations or whatever it's called, like, you can do it for LIV. They're just not getting to that point yet.
I think it's that flexibility. Let's call it ambiguity. And you're right. Like, there's a lot of things that Kerry Haigh does in the PGA of America.
Ambiguity is dangerous, Rex.
It is, but it's also, in this particular case, it's going to benefit them in the long term, because next year we're probably going to be sitting here having that same conversation. However, Kerry Haigh will have the same cover that he has this year, that they feel like they have the flexibility to look at each tour, at each player individually, regardless of what tour they play on, and decide, is Taylor Gooch really playing well enough, and should he be in the field? Now, I think there's going to be people who don't like the answer. Don't get me wrong. And you're right. I'll go back to what you continue to harp on, and I don't disagree with you, that the easiest fix, as you pointed out numerous times, is just to come up with whatever the list is. Pick the top 5 off the LIV money list, off the LIV points list, whatever it is you want to use that they have over
order
there.
of merit. It's all you have to do.
Exactly. That's fine. And include them. That's the simplest fix, but it is not the easiest fix, because what you're ignoring in that is the fact that the PGA of America is part of the ecosystem, and the others are not probably going to fall in line with that. And you have to be cognizant of the politics of the moment.
And Seth Waugh has been consistent. I remember back to Kiwa 2 years ago that he didn't like the idea of this. He didn't like where the money was coming from. He didn't think that this level of disruption was good for the game.
Still doesn't like the business model. I mean, he's very, very outspoken.
He still thinks they're burning through money. He still thinks it's not sustainable. I'm not sure what that has to do with the fact whether these players are good enough and in good enough form to qualify for his PGA Championship. But I think that's another topic for another day.
Well, and I will say, I mean, the bigger concern for me, like, I think Kerry Haigh pretty much cast a wide enough net that, I hate to put it this way, because he's going to talk around it, but Kerry Haigh is going to do whatever Kerry Haigh wants to do in this particular case. The bigger deal in my mind is the official World Golf conversation, because Seth Waugh is on the board, and he probably said some things that, in retrospect, he was in an article earlier this week in the Times, and from where he's coming from, he needs to probably be a little bit more careful, because this is going to become a hot button issue. It's probably going to become another lawsuit. And I don't disagree with anything he said. I think there is something to be said for the idea that his argument was, this is the process. This is always the process. Every time we add a tour to the world ranking, this takes time. We have to look at what they're doing. We have to evaluate the long-term goals. We have to evaluate the strength of their field. It takes time. I understand that. I understand where he's coming from, but he's not helping the argument that there is the idea, certainly on the other side of the equation, the LIV side of the equation, that there's collusion on this side that's trying to keep LIV Golf out of the world golf ranking.
Yeah, it does seem like he needs to be more neutral than he has been. It's fine if he has an opinion, but I think there's a reason why Jay Monahan, Keith Pelley recused themselves from that position, because they were invested in it. They were, they're basically a stakeholder in what this could potentially become. So it is a little bit of a dicey area. As it relates to LIV Golf, 17 guys in the field after Martin Kaymer withdrew. They finished 3 of the top 6 at the Masters tournament. How do you think they'll fare this week, and who will perform the best?
I mean, I don't think anyone should be surprised if we end up with another leaderboard with 1, 2. I mean, we had 3 players in the mix going down to the final putt on Sunday at the Masters. And I wouldn't expect that to change. I keep going back to the cliche that it's become in my mind that Dustin Johnson is still a top 10 player in the world. Cam Smith is still a top 10 player. Certainly you looked at what Brooks Koepka did at the Masters. You know that, I mean, you can sit here and pick apart and you can make your choice to either like LIV Golf or not like LIV Golf. 54 holes, team concept, whatever the case may be. These are still top players. And watching them play the last few days, I was just watching Dustin Johnson out on the range. He's still just a phenomenal player. And you look at this golf course and you would think, well, it's right in his wheelhouse. There's no reason for him not to contend there. And I would make the same argument for Brooks Koepka. I think it makes it better for golf. I said this at the Masters. I know it's uncomfortable in Ponte Vedra. I know that they don't want to see that on the leaderboard. But if you're a golf fan and you've got a healthy mix of LIV players and PGA Tour players atop the leaderboard going into Sunday, if you're not entertained by that, then maybe golf's not your thing.
I mean, Oak Hill should be right up the alley of Brooks Koepka and Dustin Johnson, last week's winner on LIV. There's no doubt about that. Taylor Gooch's level of play that he's shown over the past couple of months is indicative of a player who's ready to take the next leap in a major championship. Overall, I don't think they're going to fare quite as well, and I think that's just a numbers game, right? There's 90 some odd players at the Masters this year. You had 18 LIV players. This is 17 LIV players with 156 man field. Like, the numbers are not in their favor, and I just think the caliber of tests that they're going to face will weed out some of those guys. Like, this is not Abe Answer's golf course, right?
No,
like this
it would be but that has nothing to do with LIV. It wouldn't be as close.
No.
If you're still in the PGA Tour.
That's what I'm saying. And so when you're like looking down the list of LIV players, like I think there's only a handful of them who will contend this week, but I do think that they will contend. It would not surprise me at all if Brooks Koepka picks up his 3rd PGA Championship and his 5th major championship overall. I've said that my pick to win is Scotty Scheffler. I don't know if he's a sleeper anymore because I believe he's still one of the top 10 players in the world. I think Tony Finau is tailor-made for this type of golf course. Long. He's a great driver of the golf ball. He has the temperament. You mentioned like a U.S. Open style test. Like, he has the temperament to play well on that sort of examination. You look at his U.S. Open record; it's actually the best among the major championships that he has played in his career. So he was a player that I would certainly keep an eye on. Cameron Young kind of fits that mold as well. What do you think in pick to win, and maybe a couple other guys who you think could pop up?
I mean, Jon Rahm is impossible to ignore. I'm not going to double down on what you said because I'll go in the other direction. And actually, Jaime Diaz and Paul McGinley had a really interesting conversation on Live from last night about sort of splitting hairs between the differences between Jon Rahm and Scotty Scheffler. And Jaime's case was that if you compare them game to game, you're almost looking in the mirror. His argument is that Scotty seems to be a little bit more consistent with the short game than what Jon Rahm. But this version of Jon Rahm,
Scotty Scheffler, arguably the best short game in the game.
And I don't know that he putted his best. He was actually last in the field at Augusta, so that concerns me. But I will lean in that direction just for clarity on this between you and I, only because I feel like if it comes down to the idea that this is going to be a short game issue, and I believe it's going to be a ball striking issue, but I still think that Scotty Scheffler has the best short game in the game at the moment. I'll go a little bit, and Cam Young's probably the one. I mean, if you're looking for the next Jason Duffner, that robot is the guy. That's the guy. What are you shaking your head for?
I'm not sure those two have ever been mentioned in the same breath, other
more
than
of a ball
personality wise. For they're separated by 60 yards.
No, more of a ball striking. I mean, if you look at Cam Young's numbers, and I was talking with Scott Hamilton, a screen coach, the other day about this. I'm like, that robot should play well here, and he said absolutely. Like, that's who you look at when if Jason Duffner was the formula the last time we played here, that the current model of that, granted, you're right, hits it a lot farther than Jason Duffner, that would be Cam Young. I guess the one that kind of interests me the most, though, if you're going to do it, would be Jason Day, coming off a very emotional win last week in Dallas. But I mean, he's been trending. I think I've mentioned him on every podcast for the last few weeks. He's just been trending in that direction. I don't think either one of us were surprised what happened on Sunday in Dallas. He's won this championship before, and I feel like that as long as he's healthy, which he does seem to be healthy, this would be another good week for him.
Terrell Hatton has certainly been trending over the past couple weeks, would relish this sort of test as well. How about last year's U.S. Open champion, Matt Fitzpatrick? There's zero reason why with his added length he cannot play well, especially if it becomes a scrambling contest, if the wind picks up or everyone's missing fairways and trying to get up and down. Those are a couple players that were top of mind for me as well. Rex, I know you need to get out of there. We need to prepare for evening live from. Just to put a fine point on the top of this podcast, how everything comes back to poop. Here's a
There it
text
is. Why?
from my
Why
wife
every
right
time?
now, unprompted.
Show it to us. Show it to us. Let's see it.
I can't. It's on my computer. It's on my iMessage. But it says she came home. Speaking of my 1.5-year-old daughter, Lily, she came home with a huge poop in her diaper. This was unprompted.
I understand it, and I get it. I'm a parent.
That's just the phase of life we're in.
But I get it. I'm a parent. Parents in the audience are going to understand this.
With your 3 boys, all of whom are 18 or older, you have not had to deal with them defecating.
Nah, you'd be surprised.
Probably not for the reasons that you could think. But that is just the phase.
I just don't understand why we always have to get back to this. Can we just go somewhere else in the future? Why does it always have to come back to poop?
Stay tuned for the daily podcast.
No barbecue talk, but you had barbecue last night, by the way.
I did. The Golf Channel podcast with Rex and Lav. We'll be doing mini pods after each and every tournament round, beginning, of course, on Thursday. Rex will be doing a live show with us Sunday night, late Sunday night, after the conclusion of the PGA Championship. Of course, he will not be here. So let's, fingers crossed, we'll have the most epic major championship ever. I want a Rory, Rahm, Scotty, Xander Cantlay duel. Top 5 players in the world. Phil, Bryson. Oh, my God. The world
just kicking myself
just
on the plane.
Down.
Screaming at the guy sitting next to me.
And I'm just sitting there. I've got a plethora of storylines to choose from. So make sure you guys check out Live From. Make sure you check out golfchannel.com for the rest of the week. And we will talk to you guys on Thursday. What will hopefully be a great opening round of this PGA Championship at Oak Hill.